Let's just take a look at what we do know about the next season. We haven't really had any leaks or anything come out about gameplay or the map or anything like that, but we know there is going to be a massive event, one of the biggest events we've ever seen. I'm not going to go into too much detail. That's not the point of today's video, but what you need to know is the leaks so far point to the fact that we are going to go to space. We are going to the moon, where we have rebuilt Mecha Team Leader, the giant robot, and we're bringing it back to, I imagine, Earth or where Fortnite is to fight or do something to do with the Collider. This event is going to be absolutely massive. This is not a low effort event. This is the level of Mech Team Leader versus the giant monster from Chapter 1, one of the most beloved events. Epic is putting in effort coming into this new season. In case you guys want to get excited for the new season with me, I'm actually doing a 24-hour season starting an hour before the event kicks off. If you guys don't know when the event is kicking off for you, just log into Fortnite, check where the clock is, an hour. When that clock gets to 1 hour, I will be live on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/AussieAntics, doing a 24-hour stream, looking at all the leaks, getting hyped, watching the event, and then jumping in and playing the new season. It's going to be a good time. Make sure you guys are there. Now, let's jump into talking about where Epic can put that effort, in my opinion, to make this season the best season we've ever seen. And of course, I needed to bring out my incredible artistic skill. I needed to really bring you an intellectual and informative graph, which of course I made on MS Paint. Now, let me explain this. I know it looks scuffed, but let me explain it. So on the bottom, that is the impact it has on competitive. So the further along the right line, the worse it is for competitive. And then on the left, we obviously have fun, where the higher it is, the more fun it is. Now, I think the issue with Fortnite right now, in my opinion, the reason why I'm not enjoying it as much is a lot of the items that we have right now, you could see being very, very uncompetitive. They are very unskillful, but they're also not a lot of fun. So my example of that would be the Combat SMG or the Drum Shotgun. They're insanely strong, but even when you use them and kill someone with them, you don't get a massive sense of satisfaction. You don't feel like it was really fun. You didn't feel like you outplayed someone or went crazy and pulled off some nutty play. An example of an item that I think is incredibly fun, but is very, very good for competitive is the bounce pad. If you use it really, really well, it is an incredibly good item, but if you use it poorly, you're gonna get beamed and you're gonna die. It's great for solos, trios, duos. It's good for everything. You can do trick shots. It's really fun in pubs, but it's also good for competitive. It is a perfect item. But what I think we need more of, and in the past I've said we shouldn't have these items, so I admit a mistake here. I really want the game right now, competitively and casually, to be more fun, but not at the expense of competitive. And I think items like shockwaves are a good example of that. Yes, they probably make the game a little bit less competitive, in my opinion. Being able to shockwave into someone's box or shockwave on high ground or just, you know, explode and run away. It does make the game a little bit less competitive, but it makes it so much more fun, where in my opinion, it's worth it. As long as an item stays on the line or to the left of the line, where it is more fun for how less it makes the game competitive, I think that's a fantastic item. I hope that makes sense to you guys. It's the only way I could really explain it properly. And again, I want some fun items back in the game. I've been arguing this now for about like 3 or 4 seasons. If you go back and watch my wishlist videos from like mid chapter 2, when we had these fun items, I was arguing to take some of them out because I thought the game was a little bit broken, it was a little bit crazy, and I don't want to go back to like World Cup meta, because World Cup we have a lot of nostalgia for. It was a lot of fun, but if we brought back all those items, people would be ultimately pretty miserable after a while. Maybe pubs would be fun, maybe arena would be fun, but competitive would be pretty terrible. When you just heavy snipe, mini gunning in, then you're throwing stink grenades, your rift going, your shot, like it just had way too much crazy stuff. But I do think we need at least some of the items back that make the game more fun. And yes, they might make it a little bit less competitive. In some ways, they do make it more competitive because you have more mobility. So when there's bad zones, but if you add too much mobility, I do think it makes the game less competitive. But if it's more fun, I think it's worth it, because right now, pros are not playing the game. And I know that a lot of the casuals don't like when the game's catered to pros, and I get that. That's why I would argue that we need to have 3 separate loot pools. We need to have one for pubs, one for arena, and one for tournaments. But I'll get to that in a second. But at the same time, as someone who cares mostly about competitive, I think bringing back some of these fun items that maybe could make the game less competitive will still ultimately make the game increase its skill gap, because pros will actually play. There are almost no scrims running which have all the tier 1 pros. This is like one of the first times in Fortnite's history for the last few seasons where NA East has not had a like tier 1 pro scrims. We have Vitality doing great things, but we haven't seen, you know, like we used to back in the days of Elite, where we had like 100 players who are gonna make grands all playing together at the same time. Most pros these days, like Tayson's admitting vocally on Twitter that he is not even playing the game right now. We have Miro and Booger admitting they're not playing the game right now. When the pros who are winning FNCS and some of the best in the world can't even get on to play outside of tournaments, something is wrong. So clearly making the game more competitive, I know it's not very competitive right now, but more competitive might not always be the best solution to help the competitive scene. I think a balance has to be struck between making the game fun and making the game competitive. Chapter 2 Season 4 would be a perfect example. There was some absolutely crazy things in that meta with shockwaves, with crash pads, all this crazy stuff, but pros loved it and casuals loved it, and it was one of the most fun and most played seasons. So I think finding that balance again is where Fortnite will be at the absolute sweet spot as far as competitive goes, and a lot of players who aren't enjoying the game right now because they're stuck with combat SMGs and drum shotguns that aren't competitive and aren't overly fun. Before I talk about splitting the loot pools, I would also just expect that Epic creates some fun, engaging, cool new items. I know I'm using examples like shockwaves because that's what I can think of to get my point across, but Epic are better developers than me. They know how to come up with crazy cool items. They've done it in the past. I think the inflatable was an example of an item that I never would have thought of, but would 100% should be back in the game. It was only in for one season, and it's a great example of what I'm talking about. If you use it well, it's really, really good. It's incredibly fun for casuals and competitive, but if you use it poorly, it's terrible. But if you use it right, the payoff is really fun. I just think it's such a good item, and I want more of those instead of having them taken out every single season. Also, mythics, I would love to have mythics back, because right now in the current season, the mythic drops, which is like Covert and Collider, they have so much loot, and they do have mythics at them, but the mythics aren't, in my opinion, great mythics because they're just existing guns that do a little bit more damage. I want crazy new mythics that do something entirely new, like Chapter 2 Season 2 and Season 3. You would get in and you'd be like, you know what? I want to play with a grappler this game. So you would go and you would drop on the grappler and get the grappler, and it made going different drop spots and playing different ways way more fun. You're like, I'm feeling confident today. My mechanics are looking really good. I feel like I can hold down Covert. So you'd go Covert. Like, I absolutely loved how that played out. And those aren't, you know, the best examples of mythics because some of them were super broken, but you get the point I'm trying to make. I love really, really strong drops that are heavily contested, that give you an item, but not just an item that's a little bit better than a legendary item I can find anywhere. I want something completely unique. I think that would be so amazing for the game right now. Now, let's go back to a point that I made that I've been making for a very long time. The fact that this game doesn't need to pick one or the other. Casuals don't need to get mad that competitive, sweaty players are ruining the game by making it not fun. And competitive players and people who take the game seriously shouldn't be getting mad at casuals for making the game more casual and goofy and not making it competitive enough. We can make everyone happy. Epic has always had the ability to make everyone happy. They're just, for some reason, choosing not to. The only argument I've ever heard for why they want to keep the loot pools so similar is that when casuals go and watch competitive events like World Cup, they're going to understand more by seeing the items they use in their games every day. While that does make sense in theory, you have to understand, if you've ever watched a competitive game and you're a casual, there is so much more going on that you have no clue about that's not in your casual games. Just the competitive Fortnite and casual Fortnite are so far apart, they're basically separate games. The way you play them, the way end games play out with Storm Surge, so many other things, they are completely different. Having similar items, I understand, but I feel like if you're a Fortnite player and, you know, you're watching competitive and you've never, ever watched competitive before, you've only played casual, and you're like, oh, that gun looks a little bit different. Oh, it shoots pretty fast. It's kind of like a submachine gun. That's not going to be like mind-blowingly confusing. You can have the same weapons or even just have them do less or more damage in competitive to make it more competitive. You can have the stats adjusted. It's not that hard. And how I would argue they would do this is splitting the loot pools, ideally into 3 separate loot pools. Pubs, which should just be crazy, wacky, and fun. It should be fully casual. People should really enjoy it and just jump in for the craziness of the game that Fortnite Battle Royale can be. Then there would be Arena, which would be slightly more competitive, but not as crazy. You wouldn't put in all the wacky guns like the rail guns and the recon scanners and things like that, but you still have some fun things in there, in my opinion. Like I said, the shockwaves, the crash pad, maybe flint knocks, things like that, heavy snipers that maybe necessarily you don't want in competitive, but I still think would be an Arena, because Arena would be where you'd go to play, to have fun, but also have fun against people more close to your skill level where it matters a little bit more. Because I've been arguing for a proper ranked game mode for the longest time. You guys are sick of hearing me talk about it. Epic clearly is not giving us a proper ranked game mode. If we got a proper ranked game mode, I would obviously want that to be the same loot pool as competitive. But if we're not going to get a proper ranked game mode, let's at least have arena be fun. Because right now, it's not overly competitive. It's not great practice for tournaments or anything like that. And it's not really that fun. It's in this weird middle ground. So if you're not going to make it competitive or really good practice for tournaments, then just make it fun, right? Like that makes sense to me. Again, there's a lot of things Epic could do to make arena more competitive, but right now it really is just pubs with less fun items against slightly better players with Siphon and map farming. Like that's really it. You're not versing crazy opponents that equal to your skill level, so you're playing it like a tournament. You're not dropping edge map and getting your loot and rotating. Maybe some of you guys are, but most of the better players aren't because they know it's not competitive. And then you'd have the tournament and competitive loot pool, which is just that. I would still argue you'd want some fun things in there, like I just said earlier, like the shockwaves and things that maybe are a little bit less competitive, but they're still making the game more fun, but you wouldn't go all out. You'd still keep out some of the things in arena. And I know what you're about to say, oh, Ozzy, what does that mean for scrims? Because when we run scrims, we have to run custom games on arena. Just add a scrims playlist. It could literally be a playlist that just sits there that doesn't queue into a public match, but when you use a custom code, you will get tournament rules. You'd get tournament loadouts. That is not hard to do. That takes like 10 seconds for a software engineer. Go right now into Fortnite, click play, and look at how many, like hundreds of options of games there are. To add a singular one that is just tournament loot that run customs on is not hard. And then for the first time, in my opinion, in Fortnite's history, you should have everyone happy. There's going to be some people who won't like the pub playlist and maybe it's a little bit too crazy for them, or maybe they preferred it last season because they really liked a weapon that's not in the new season. Like no one's going to be 100% happy, but it's going to be a lot closer than where we are now. And when Epic makes balance changes and updates, it doesn't have to affect the casual loot pool to improve competitive, and vice versa. If they wanted to improve competitive, they wouldn't have to hurt the casual player base. Everyone could be happy. Please, Epic. I still have no clue why we haven't done this. Epic's kind of done it a little bit. For a little while there in arena, for example, when the cars got vaulted from competitive for increasing server lag, they kept them in arena. That was, I thought, the first step in the right direction, because it makes sense, right? Servers aren't that laggy in arena because there's not going to be like 50 people endgame, but they are in tournaments. But in arena, you want to get around the map faster, so it's a bit more fun. You don't want to be running for forever, not finding anyone. So cars in arena, but not in tournaments, was amazing. I was like, Epic's doing it. They're listening. No, they changed it like a week later. It made me so sad, but it showed they can do it. They're just choosing not to for whatever reason. Some of you guys are probably getting annoyed at this point that I haven't really specifically talked about what weapons I want in the game other than a few. I'll give a quick critique of the season because I've talked about this all already a lot. SMGs are way too strong in my opinion. Bleed damage should not belong in Fortnite. I know a lot of people argue that it's a way for high ping players to kill low ping players when they're low health instead of them just turbo building walls constantly. I am now playing quite often with friends on NA East now that I'm in Calgary on like 70 ping, and I know some of you guys are going to say, oh, but I pay on 200 ping. Like I get it, some of you guys are playing from Mars on 1000 ping. Everyone's got it worse, but my point is 70 ping is still considered quite high, and I still hate bleed damage. That's the only good argument I've heard for why bullets should phase through walls and deal damage to people turbo building, is because people on high ping says it helps them kill low ping players. But I still think there's so many ways to take out low ping players rather than just sitting there and trying to replace a wall for a million years. I just don't think the SMGs should be this strong for casual or for competitive. They're just not really fun, and unfortunately having two of them means they're massively clogging up the loot pool. And that's my next thing I want to argue. The loot pool right now is so clogged up, but not fun. There is a Ranger AR in every single rarity that I'll almost never use if I find a burst of any other rarity. There's a pistol in every single rarity. Two pistols in every single rarity in pubs that I'll almost never use either of them. There's a sniper rifle at every single rarity that I'll almost never use. Then there's an auto shotgun on almost every rarity that I'll never use. Then there's a drum shotgun on every rarity that is great, but I find incredibly boring. I think 100% it needs to go out of the game next season. It's just not fun. It's not good for the game, in my opinion, especially in no builds. It just looks obnoxious. Then there's the weapons I actually want to use. So all I'm looking for is a burst rifle every single game, a striker shotgun every single range, and then either of the SMGs, preferably the combat. But there is so much other random loot that's clogging up the loot pool that makes spawn fighting feel terrible that when I finally get the loadout that I actually wanted to use, half the game is gone or 3/4 of the game is gone, and they're not even crazy items. I'm not looking for mythics or heavy snipers or really fun items. I'm just looking for a basic loadout. So I really hope that Epic can work on that one. And I do think the burst AR right now is way too strong as well, especially in a competitive setting or in no builds. It just does way too much damage way too easily. The one benefit of the burst rifle right now for me is it's really helping controller players at range get their surge in a competitive setting, or just help you guys in games hit more long range shots, because long range aim assist is quite weak, but on the burst rifle it seems to overcome that. But I just don't really know if adding red dots and a first person element to Fortnite is a good idea. The burst rifle and the MK7 have both been way too strong and two of the most overpowered ARs we've ever had, and I think it is just because of the ability to have the red dot and go first person makes hitting shots so much easier, especially when both of them have very relatively low bloom. Next up is recoil. I love recoil in Fortnite. I think it's a great addition. It could be really good for the game, but Epic is making recoil way too easy to control for how much damage it does. The MK7 and the Combat SMG and even the Combat AR in pubs hits so ridiculously hard, and all you have to do is pull down slightly on your mouse or slightly on your joystick and you've now counteracted the recoil. If we're gonna have recoil guns in the game, they need to have a significant amount of recoil so controlling them actually gets the payoff where it's worth it. Look at any other game like Apex that has a good recoil system that is difficult to control, not too difficult, but enough where the gun is now worth the damage it outputs. Those are my main critiques of the season. I think the striker shotgun is in a really good state right now. I would love a more diverse shotgun loot pool though. I loved when we had Chapter 2 Season 5 and it was lever, tax, charge shotguns, and dragon shotgun. I love dragon shotgun. It's like my favorite gun ever, but not a lot of people love it. If it came back, it would make me happy. But I don't know if it'd be the best for the game. But having a diverse shotgun pool like that, maybe if we had striker shotgun, tax, and charges, would be amazing. Obviously, you'd have to maybe have the charge hit harder than the striker shotgun to be worth it. But imagine you pick up a shotgun where it's a striker, it shoots really fast, it has a good edit shoot time, it has a bit of a weight on the second shot, so it's not really for box jumping, it's more for playing angles and going smart and hitting that big shot. Then you have the tax shotgun that shoots way faster. It's really good for taking walls and piece control. It's more for jumping in and hitting someone twice consistently really quickly. Then you have the charge shotgun that's a bit more methodical. It's slower, you have to charge up your shot, but it hits way harder than the other two. How fun would that be? You could actually pick up the shotgun based on your player preference, and then when you verse someone based on the shotgun they're using, you'd have to play differently. It makes the game so incredibly fun compared to now where we have the drum shotgun that's just what by the time you know they have a doof doof doof, they're in your box and you're dead, or they're running the striker, which is decent. The auto some people seem to like, but I think the old tack just fit that role so much better. It's not diverse. I would love a diverse shotgun pool like that. Last up, I think snipers should be in the game with one-shot headshot. Sue me. I think one-shot headshotting is so satisfying and so fun, and I think it does add a good element to competitive. You can't just sit there and overpeak and spray for your surge tags. You have to be careful so you don't get headshot sniped. But if you're not going to have one-shot headshots in the game, then remove the sniper. No one is using it. It is just completely clogging up the loot pool. It shoots slower. The bullet trajectory is way slower, so it's even harder to hit a shot, let alone the fact you don't one-shot headshot, and Fortnite has building. If they're 200 meters away and I hit them for 199, it doesn't matter if they don't die because they're just going to heal by the time I get there. It's not worth carrying. So either have the headshot snipers do one-shot headshot, or don't have them in the game. I think this would make it so much better. I know I talked at the start of the video about why I think there's going to be a super high effort season, but you got to remember on top of that, we have LAN events coming back. We have both dream hacks taking place this upcoming. We have one coming up in a couple days on the old season, one on the new season, and I imagine and I've heard there's a couple more LAN events potentially around the corner, and we have dailies coming back. We don't know what the format is just yet, but we did have dailies confirmed taking place next season, so that's another reason why people are going to be playing the game and grinding every single day. If we get a good meta on top of that, scrims will start popping off. It's summer, so all the kids are home, so arena queues will be incredibly fast. All the creative maps will be booming. Like, we have so much potential to see Fortnite jump back to some of its previous glory. Like, I am incredibly excited, and I know you guys always say I'm overly hopeful, but right now I can't help but be optimistic because this could be Epic's chance to really bring Fortnite back, and I think they might finally nail it. We'll just have to see. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please chuck a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you the next one.